Okay, it's October 9th, 7 o'clock. I'm trying something different tonight. Let's bear with me. First of all, a reading from Leonard Ravenhill's Sodom Had No Bible. D.L. Moody said, I would rather awake to a sleeping church than a sleeping world. Our indulgences condemn us. We have slept too long, eaten too much, spent more than we have needed to on things that did not matter, at prices we could not afford. The Bible parable says that while men slept, the enemy sowed tares among the wheat. A boy who rises at 4:30 in the morning to deliver papers is considered a go-getter and will get a place in the sun. But to urge our young people to rise at 5:30 to pray is considered fanaticism. A woman who is doing the rounds, golf, bridge, parties, dancing, can give 7 or 8 hours a day to these testy trivialities. But a woman giving the same hours to prayer and tract distribution is talked about as religiously off balance. A man who clips $30 a week out of his budget for cigarettes, drinks, and gambling is considered a sport and worldly wise man. But the brother who, in love for his Lord and for lost men, tithes the same amount, not only hears whispers that is being milked by the lazy preachers, but is looked upon as a fool by his workmates. No wonder somebody has written, I dreamed that somehow I had come to dwell in topsy-turvydom, where vice is virtue, virtue vice, where nice is nasty, nasty nice, where right is wrong and wrong is right, where white is black and black is white. Our whole sense of values must be revolutionized. Before we stand for judgment at the bar of God, we need to sit in judgment on ourselves. We need to redirect our talents before they are everlastingly taken from us. This is the hour. Tomorrow may not be ours. Men in Berlin are feverishly digging tunnels to escape the curse of Russia. All men are racing to beat atom bombs, yet they stagger on blindly without one chance here or hereafter to escape the fiery wrath of God, who is unchangeable in his holiness and in his anger. I ask again, why then this suffocating indifference to the lostness of our cultured heathen who sleep away their few Sabbaths in their garden seats or lays by their swimming pools with a peace that is merely moral palsy? The Bishop of Montana says the church must realize that unless every congregation sets out to do something about its own conditions first, and then about its own community, foreign missions are ridiculous even though they are commanded. Wind of God, come and blow upon this suffocating indifference that chokes the channel of service to lost men. This is back in the 1971 that it's written. So the next thing is to look at reality versus fantasy. To the Western media, continual lies. That there isn't anything in this war in Ukraine that isn't a lie, an absolute lie about what's going on in the war between Ukraine and Russia. Here, for example, this Crimea bridge that's supposedly destroyed and blown up. First of all, it was done by Ukrainians murdering an Azerbaijani who was in a truck and sent across the bridge to blow it up. And just like the first attack on the World Trade Centers, where Mullah Omar, I think it was, put explosives down at the base of the World Trade Center, blew everything up, but didn't damage the WTC itself. The bridge is still working within a couple hours. Trains are still running. So it purposely kills a person, but the West, and whoever's on the bridge, but the West claims this titanic victory and reports lies nonstop. Here's Alexander Mercouris.
It's not the impression, however, that you would get from following the Western media. I've been reading various Western media accounts of the attack on the bridge, of the Crimean Bridge. I've been reading reports about how the bridge has collapsed, how it has been blown up, how it has fallen, none of which, as we can see, is true. If you read these articles carefully, if you read through them, if you go past the headlines, which give the impression of the bridge having entirely collapsed, if you drill through into the articles, you will find squirreled away in these long articles sentences which appear to acknowledge that some traffic is moving across the bridge, though it doesn't admit that railway traffic has now apparently resumed at its previous level, and that there is now considerable road traffic crossing the bridge as well. Now, I have to say, this is deeply misleading. In fact, it is so misleading that I have to question the integrity of the reporting which is involved. Certainly, this sabotage on the bridge has been an embarrassment for the Russians. A truck laden with explosives was able to penetrate the security barriers and cause significant damage to the bridge. And of course, there are political repercussions from an attack of this nature.
We won't go into, because I'm not interested in the political ramifications. I'm interested in the spiritual ramifications, and I'm interested in what Americans are in complete denial about, and these kind of false reports that are only part of this propaganda machine that's trying to prop up the administration and show Joe Biden and the Democrats as these victorious warriors against the evil Putin. And there's nothing about it that it's a scripted false narrative. There's nothing about it that's true, just as there hasn't been anything about this propaganda machine that's been true for decades now. Here's somebody who speaks the truth about what I've seen coming and what is in my everything I've said for the last year now.
You're going to hear about the judgment of New York City in this prophecy. God has brought many hard words for this city that I live in. God has brought many final words for New York City. And in the prophecy, you're going to hear some of those words. You're going to hear about why New York will be judged. You're going to hear about what form that judgment will take. You're going to hear about what God has to say about the so-called good people of New York. So even those that God would say, okay, these people are not exactly guilty of gross sin, but here is their sin nonetheless. So you're going to hear what's going to happen to that. You're going to hear what God says about America, the fact that America does not adopt a watchman's stance. So in other words, America is not watching and praying for the coming of the Lord. In fact, America is getting deeper and deeper into the kind of sin that would cause a person's heart to go into palpitations when they hear it. And the reason I know that that is so is because when people come to the Master's voice and they begin to go through the video, especially the videos of the last 3 months, and they begin to hear about sex houses where little children are being sodomized by grown men, where people are being chained to walls and being forced to perform sex acts. And as long as the person who is paying to chain you to that wall has paid for 2 hours, that person has the right to sodomize you or do whatever they want to you, sometimes even bringing in animals to use on you for the 2 hours that they have paid for. And so when people come to this channel and they hear the things that God is revealing, they're taken aback because there's this general idea that this is a nation of Christians, which is by now, if you've come this far with the Master's voice, it's fallacy. So
yes, it's a complete fallacy, and that's what I've been speaking to from one video to the next, and for years now, really, because I've been going from Christian church to Christian church for years and years, and finding nothing but falsity or the lukewarm church or just what Leonard Ravenhill is describing in the 70s. It's a church that's mired in pleasure seeking. And what Celestial is describing in her video here and in her other videos is exactly what's going on in terms of these torture chambers and torture dungeons. You see it all the time. You see it continually on TV. You read about it in Epstein and Weinstein and Alec Baldwin case and the bondage, domination, sadomasochistic dungeons. It's throughout the culture itself. It's in the movies. The movies are based on real life. The movies are documentaries just turned into soap opera dramas, like the Brian De Palma films, Scarface. They take a reality and then they turn it into an overblown operatic fiction, but the reality of it is more horrible if it's just shown as a documentary. And we're in complete denial about everything. We're particularly in complete denial about the fact that God's wrath and judgment is on this country. The Led Zeppelin book I have talks about Led Zeppelin using Great Danes to have intercourse with prostitutes and raping women with a fish, and that Frank Zappa has a whole opera of his own about what was done by the Led Zeppelin entourage. Not, Jimmy Page had there's other things going on, but and Jimmy Page is the primary vector for bringing the satanic Thelema religion into popular culture in the 70s. All of this is an abomination, and I'll get to that later. So let's hit the next video, which is really what's going on with this clown Zelensky that the West is propping up as some kind of hero in Vogue magazine in these absurd photo shoots. And he's the darling, of course, of the comic crowd, the Ben Stillers, the Bonos, the whomever. This fantasy that Hollywood production, I mean, Ronald Reagan was similar. Zelensky's just another current incarnation of these actors that they're great at acting a part, and then they'll shuffle off to retirement in Boca Raton or something. Here we go.
Begin. His Highness Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine issued a decree earlier this week that his country will require aid worth at least $9 billion per month to survive, that the West must provide it with. Taking a leaf out of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's playbook, is now threatening the EU with a huge migrant wave of Ukrainian asylum seekers if Ukraine's coffers are not replenished. On the other hand, Zelensky is also working overtime to strip EU of Russian gas and cause an economic tragedy in the continent. Zelensky on Tuesday blasted Canada for allowing Russian gas turbines to be flown back to Russia, which will soon enable the Russian gas giant Gazprom to stabilize energy supplies to EU. Ukraine is now demanding Canada's federal court take legal action against the Justin Trudeau administration, and if he succeeds, all hell will break loose on Europe very soon. You see, Zelensky's shenanigans are now getting on EU's nerves. The West is fast realizing that Ukraine is turning out to be a major financial and security liability for it. So they have now devised a plan to get rid of Zelensky once and for all. More than 40 nations, including US and various EU nations, are now demanding investigations into suspected war crimes in Ukraine. Reuters reported that on Thursday, 45 countries at the conference in The Hague, headquarters of the International Criminal Court, or ICC, signed a political declaration to work together on investigations into war crimes in Ukraine. Interestingly, this comes days after a UN research revealed that Ukraine was responsible for committing war crimes during the war.
Yes, blame for nursing home attacks. So where do we hear a word of this in the Western media? So far, this is all over international news, incidentally. This is just one source. There's all Americans really have to do is follow a few international news sources, and they'll be able to tell that they're NPR and MSNBC and everything, Forbes, Fox News, Wall Street Journal, you name it, right and left, because they're all behind this insane war effort, as they always are and always have been and always will be. Why? Because they profit. These are always wars that profit the shareholders of the media companies. War is great for business, but it's not great for the working class of the United States of America or Europe or anywhere else. Here is Jordan Peterson sees this.
Well, I think the Russians are, or yes, I think Putin has weaponized a certain degree of anti-woke sentiment among Russians. And some of that anti-woke doctrine, let's say, which is more conservative, he may also believe. But minimally, he's managed to use it very effectively on the propaganda front. And that's certainly one of the factors that's driving the war and sustaining it and causing it.
All right, so now he's filling this out a bit for.
Yeah. And this is the upshot. Here's a prepper who's following a gun shop owner. He knows that the guns are just flying off the shelves along with ammunition. So again, one of my predictions, prophecies, whatever you want to call them, is that there's going to be a civil war here. That people are being pushed into paranoia, fear, panic. They're losing their jobs. They don't know if Russia's attacking or if the government's going to be attacking to take their weapons, or their next door neighbor is a Russian spy. Anything. But meanwhile, on the surface, people are in a kind of psychosis, somatic state, a somatic narcissistic psychosis, let's call it, where they think that I don't know what they think, but they aren't thinking about this reality that's coming like a fireball across the sky.
Now, my question to you is, do you believe that we are going to be affected militarily on the United States in American soil? If you don't, I want you to listen to exactly what the Russian State Duma said. Russian State Duma deputy, Washington's continuation of its measures against Russia will push Moscow to transfer operations to American soil. The Russian State Duma says that Russia will have to resort to other operations and other options that are not on Ukrainian soil. The Kremlin says that the United States of America is working to manipulate with its oil reserves. This game won't yield a good outcome for America. The Kremlin continues that the United States has begun to lose its cool as a result of the OPEC Plus decision to reduce oil production. The Russian State Duma deputy continued that repeating the Soviet missile scenario crisis in 1962 is a possible military response to the American measures against Russia. So what does that mean? Nuclear weapons right against America's borders, or possibly within. The Russian State Duma deputy continued that the bombing of the Crimean Bridge took place at the hands of Ukraine, but the American side is the one who plans these terroristic actions. Germany is warning that the entire country and its military must begin to prepare for increasing attacks on infrastructure.
Okay, so you can see just in these news reports of one step leading to another, and that this is America that's pushing Russia into a nuclear response, not the other way around. By blowing that, the Ukrainians are carrying out the attacks, but the military intelligence of the U.S. is targeting them, and just we have had troops on the ground that we were lied about, as usual, about that. Biden was just caught lying, and he has that moment with the press of smiling and turning around and walking away as he walks backwards. There's nothing funny about any of this, but the media always finds it hilarious, and the global media as well, because that's one of the insanity aspects of media today. There's a disconnect from reality that goes back to this, the devil and Karl Marx. It starts, the Obama administration announced what they were up to when Obama took office. He says this: we are 5 days away from fundamentally, you want a fundamentalist, right? We always talk about Islamic fundamentalist and crazy Christian fundamentalist. Obama's a Marxist fundamentalist, always has been. He studied with Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals, Jeremiah Wright, all of it. Anybody reading a history book of Barack Obama knows that he's a dyed-in-the-wool communist, Marxist communist. Bernie Sanders is. There's wolves in sheep's clothing is what they're called. There's Russian operatives in the country as well. I mean, when are Americans going to wake up and understand that we're going down the tubes? Because what's the centerpiece of Marxist doctrine is to destroy the church, is to destroy the nuclear family, is to fundamentally eradicate the white male patriarch God, and destroy the nuclear family and eliminate the working class. It's always presented as we're going to have. Does anybody see some kind of workers' utopia coming around the corner here? The middle class is being systematically destroyed. Their entire life savings are going up in smoke. It's all inequity in their houses. And the dollar is being pushed to the roof, so it's destroying all the other currencies along with itself. Russia and China are stockpiling gold, and they're moving towards their own currency system. So there's no talk of this at all. I mean, I hear talk of this all over the place with financial analysts. I don't hear a word about it on the mainstream media. And that's all Americans watch. So let's go back to where this comes from, right? Barack Obama declared this on October 30th, 2008. But even then, the words fundamentally transformed should have set off alarm bells. Americans generally don't do fundamental transformation. They make changes, yes, small and large, but the remarkable system conceived by American founders, especially remarkable for its stability, was not devised for a single man to enter the White House and initiate a fundamental transformation. And this is what Obama did, using the powers that Dick Cheney had gotten with his unitary executive when the president is declaring war unilaterally on Iraq. So it's from one step to another, from administration to administration, empowering this global elitists who are, they're Marxists. Call them whatever you want, socialists, Marxists, fascists. It all comes under the heading of totalitarian government. There's no we the people. You don't have representation at the World Economic Forum, and you don't have representation in the Bilderberg groups, or you don't have representation in this administration. You have a kleptocracy and a group of oligarchs. Who among us, other than the most radical revolutionaries, actually want to fundamentally transform the nation of Washington and Jefferson and Adams and Madison and Lincoln and the Roosevelts and Kennedy and Reagan? Many people think America has many problems, but those can be addressed without a fundamental transformation. Ask professors who teach history or political ideologies, and they will tell you that totalitarian communism, Marxism, Leninism, is the ideology that seeks fundamental transformation. Recall that in the German ideology, among others, Marx and Engels said that in order to achieve communist consciousness and for the success of the cause, it is necessary that man himself should suffer a massive change. This change must come through a revolution, a process of overthrowing the old filthy yoke and founding a new society only in revolution. Marx repeatedly urged nothing less than the creation of a new world order, right? His generation, he insisted, like the Jews that Moses led out of the wilderness, must conquer a new world and must also perish in order to make room for the people who are fit for a new world. And perish they have by the tens of millions with communism. Look at the record of death in communist countries. How many tens of millions, hundreds of millions? And that's coming here. It's too late to stop this. I hate to, what Leonard, if anybody'd been listening to Leonard Ravenhill in 1971, maybe, but nobody was listening to him then, and nobody's listening to him now. This, and just like Celestial is saying, and anybody who's paying attention, this is not a Christian nation anymore. We've given up that title to follow these kind of political revolutionaries of all stripes. Donald Trump is the savior. Sean Hannity and Karl Rove, or we've got to listen to Newt Gingrich if we're conservatives, and we've got to listen to the revolution. So it's the spectrum has moved far left. Far left in terms of totalitarianism, or far right. The two things come together in the same, as Orwell saw. So many people say, "Oh, it's 1984." Well, yeah, that's because you're voting for it. Oh, yeah, I see that it's 1984. That's because you're walking around like a zombie with ignorance as strength should be planted on your forehead. It's not a never-ending frustration to me that we've accepted this zombified, conformist. The essence of fascism is conformity. It's cancel culture. It's counterculture, actually. That's the counterculture was aptly named because it was far left. The Warren Beatty Reds movies and Bonnie and Clyde and the Frank and Jesse James are the good guys. Frank and Jesse James were part of the Knights of the Golden Circle. They're part of the what turned into the Ku Klux Klan. They're Klansmen. It's all clannish. It's just called mafia. They were hiding away their Confederate gold to create a new government, to fund a new government. They were political revolutionaries. They also scalped people, incidentally. They were terrorists. They were terrorists, radical revolutionary terrorists. So why are Warren Zevon and Bob Dylan and Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid and Sam Peckinpah, why are all these people idolizing and celebrating terrorists exactly, particularly Confederate terrorists? Well, they aren't used. We're losing our democracy. We've already lost it. Now we have to turn only to Jesus Christ if you want any kind of redemption, is to repent of your sins and give praise to God, because his wrath is coming down on this country. Such is the totalitarian task of communism. Indeed, the textbook definition of totalitarianism, which I have scribbled on the chalkboard every fall summer at Grove City College since 1997, is to fundamentally transform, specifically to seek to fundamentally transform human nature via some form of political, ideological, cultural upheaval. It's called indoctrination, it's called brainwashing. And what you go to colleges for nowadays, and that's been since the left took over. I went through it myself. I was brainwashed, completely brainwashed by it. I was, yes, this is a great revolution. Let's, get take our drugs. We'll become high as kites. We'll, go through the stars. We'll go to heaven. We'll go to hell. We'll go through all the cosmic experiences imaginable. And then at the end of it, you'll be, have a needle in your arm or a crack pipe or hanging from the rafters like, I don't know who Anthony Bourdain or Robin Williams or Philip Seymour Hoffman, or you name the wages of going into this multiple personality psychosis of being a costumed superhero and kids with virtual reality helmets on. Why can't I get an amen? And yet Obama's two-term presidency no doubt marked a turning point. The country did seem to begin a fundamental transformation in that period and throughout the 2010s. The fundamental transformation, however, did not happen in areas hoped for or feared in 2008, or that Obama perhaps even had in mind, let alone dared to mention, in Columbia, Missouri. It has not been a fundamental shift in attitudes regarding the role of government, taxation, regulations, economics, class, or even healthcare, where Obama had his signature legislative achievement. It did not happen in foreign policy. The reality is that the true fundamental transformation in America and the West, which follows America, has come in the realm of culture, notably in matters of sexual orientation, gender, marriage, and family. The shift there has been unprecedented and far beyond anyone's imagination in 2008. And it's getting more nightmarish by the day. It was signaled most conspicuously in June 2015 when the Obama White House, the nation's first house, was illuminated in the colors of the LGBTQ rainbow on the day of the Obergefell decision, when the Supreme Court, by a one-vote margin, rendered unto itself the ability to redefine marriage, theretofore the province of biblical and natural law, and imposed this new constitutional right on all 50 states. If ever there was a picture of a fundamental transformation, that was it. And that was just one of countless accomplishments heralded and boasted of by the Obama administration. In June 2016, to celebrate the one-year anniversary of Obergefell, the White House press office released two extraordinary fact sheets detailing President Obama's vast efforts to promote LGBT rights at home and abroad. Not only was it telling that the White House would assemble such a list and tout it, but the sheer length of the list was stunning to behold. There was no similar list of such dramatic changes by the Obama White House in any other policy area. Such achievements included the infamous Obama bathroom fiat, through which, according to Barack Obama's executive word, all public schools were ordered to revolutionize their restrooms and locker rooms to make them available to teenage boys who wanted to be called girls. Looking back, it is in the understanding of human sexuality, its subversion, really, that Barack Obama left his stamp upon the United States. One can hope the stamp is not indelible. I don't have that hope. I think that it is because of the lack of response by the Christian community in any forceful way other than to want to play politics with this. It's not a political issue, it's a religious issue, it's a spiritual belief issue. And the attempt from the beginning of these radicals, Victor Davis Hanson has called the Biden administration the most radical administration in all of American history. And that's true. But what Hanson isn't saying is that's the Obama administration. Joe Biden is brain dead. This is the third Obama administration. It's all the holdovers. It's all the same people that have rammed this through executive orders, this fundamental transformation of what it means to be a human being. We have a black Supreme Court justice that won't define what a woman is. We have people that aren't even don't even know what sex they are, because as well as this is coming up, from there the culture's fundamental transformation has hit warp speed, with the number of optional gender identities, for instance, expanding exponentially. Changes there, more than anywhere, seem irreversible by anything other than the miraculous. And they're not going to be reversible. They're going to get even worse. Because this is prophesied in the Bible. It's in the book of Revelation. It's throughout the Bible. What's coming is the most horrific period that will make the times of Noah pale by comparison, or Sodom and Gomorrah. Be worse for the people in the cities today, of New York, of San Francisco, of Las Vegas, than it was in the time for Sodom and Gomorrah. I believe literally in the Bible. I've come full circle from all of this East-West mystical, pseudo-mystical Catholicism and Jesuits and this satanic agenda, which is the papal agenda, which is a communist agenda, because he's a Jesuit pope and he comes from liberation theology, which is communism. Why we have to call it by all these different, all this subterfuge, when it doesn't use any more subterfuge. Now that it's nakedly in power, it's everywhere you look. The Masonic symbols, I see Simon Cowell on his speed, whatever, water ski with his Masonic symbol on the front of it. You just look at was hidden in plain sight. It's no longer hidden. If people can't look with their own eyes, I'll just keep pointing them to it and see if a couple people pick up from opening their eyes, instead of believing the spin when they see an image, and then the Washington press score lies to in every possible way they can. And this is a global new world order, and it's based in Europe, and it has its tentacles coming out from the Vatican and Washington, D.C., and Britain, the city, and the currencies are collapsing. There's going to be a liquidity crisis. There's going to be a collapse, a housing collapse. There's unemployment. The inflation is shooting through the roof. As noted, the New York City Council offers public employees the option of choosing from 31 different gender identities. I have to find a list of what these 31, and how insane New York City is. I mean, Sodom and Gomorrah had, those people were saying they had a couple sexes. What are 31 different gender identities? And the center of the beast system, the belly of the beast system, is the art world. It's excess, and just go into any kind of bondage, BDSM, torture, sex slavery, child abuse, child porn, you name it. It's all over the place. If you're out in Los Angeles, if you're in France, if you're in these bohemian cities, bohemian groves of the Freemasons, you have to be blind not to see it. I mean, you have to be purposely blind, and that's what I see with the Christian churches. I mean, I'm more fed up with these wealthy churches than I am with anybody else, because they are purporting to speak the words of God and be intercessors and being intermediaries and being taking care of their congregations. And instead, they're flattering them and lying through their teeth because they want to keep people in the seats. That's all they care about is the money. They don't care about people's souls. They are multimillionaire churches and people imitating the multimillionaire churches. So this is why God is bringing down wrath on the United States of America. I'm going to just say it as it is and let the chips fall where they're going to fall. I'm trying to save souls. What happens to me is irrelevant or insignificant. How many followers I have, or how many people want to talk to me, or anything else, it just is of no concern at all. What's of concern to me is that people that I know and love and care about are brought to get out of this Babylon, and these preachers acting as if America's the shining city on the hill, and we're going to have a religious revival of what? Jesus is nowhere near these churches. They're a disgrace. They're a disgrace. You can't even imagine what first century Christian would think if they were walking in America today. So many people said, that they're going to get baptized in the Jordan, or they're walking the streets, as if going to a place has anything to do with becoming holy. As if you go and you put on your robes and do a pageant. I was at one church of charismatic lunatics, and they dress up as Mary and Joseph for a theatrical production, and of course it's co-pastored. Women are equal, and all this. People are speaking in tongues, and they've got multicultural. It's the Church of Rome. All these churches, all these Protestant churches are putting themselves under the Church of Rome. Just follow what's going on in the Vatican. Including pioneering gay communist Harry Hayes' two-spirit option. I don't know what the two-spirit option is. Of course, that is nothing compared to Facebook, which at various times since 2014 has listed 51 gender options. So you go from 31 to 51 at Facebook, which is Facebook's going in financial trouble. Their stock has been plummeting. It's no longer cool with youth because you have TikTok and everything else that's live action. Sodom and Gomorrah. What else? Facebook gave them their 51 gender options, but that's not as good as TikTok, because they can alter their faces, and it's sexual dysphoria, and it's also somatic narcissism. It's this culture of narcissism was this Jim Morrison, Rolling Stones, Beatles generation. This is somatic narcissism. It's full blown, and leaves the other behind because of people not knowing who they are. It's the most horrific kind of madness, and it comes from the parents. I assume, I don't know. It comes from Satan, but it's coming through this Marxist doctrine of fundamentally changing what it is to be a human being, to have a super species. It's Nietzschean, it's Marxist, it's the Ubermensch, it's the ruling elite, it's the global superior race that's going to hook up with computers and science and colonize space. It's complete and utter flying to the sun, just like in the Bruegel painting, just like Icarus, where the wings just melt and then you just plummet like who is the basketball player in his black helicopter? Kobe Bryant, you know, going at 70 miles per hour or something like that. God is really in charge of this. I wish people would wake up, particularly people that are so far gone into this satanic dimension. The political left's cultural revolution on the sexual, gender, family front is ubiquitous, as is its intolerance. They're the most intolerant people, as you would expect, because that's what communists / fascists are. They're conformists. They're fanatics. They're going to put people away and take them off to concentration camps. They're going to persecute what the few Christians that are left here. We see it in the culture of fear and intimidation by the self-prided forces of diversity and tolerance who viciously seek to denounce, dehumanize, demonize, and destroy anyone who disagrees with their brazen newfound conceptions of marriage and family, even as their inventions are at odds with the prevailing position of 99% plus of human beings who have bestrode the earth since the dawn of humanity. Instead, traditional Christians are the ones portrayed as the outliers, as abnormal, as extremists, as bigots, as haters. That is a fundamental transformation of a culture and a nation. That is evidence of a true revolution by the heirs of Marx and other radicals. So why is cancel culture all triumphant? It's because it's approved of by the counterculture. The Russell Brand, Joe Rogan, Stephen Colbert, Oprah Winfrey's, the pop god, the David Bowies, the monkey see, monkey do. It's you see how fantastic it looks on the surface, and it's a thrilling performance to watch people self-destruct. Like Bowie was, I don't know, he was. I have another blog or video I should do on him, because I don't condemn these. I have tremendous sympathy for what happens to these stars, but I'm not sympathetic to them leading people off into this horror nightmare, a world that they live in, because they're possessed by Satan. They're possessed by the demons of this Thelema religion. David Bowie was a Thelemite. He was a Crowley. He was a Satan practitioner. He says it, but then they dissemble. They Kenneth Anger admits it. Jimmy Page admits it. Bob Dylan even admits it. But then they dissemble. That's how Satan is. The satanic, the demonic possessed are liars, just as it says in the Bible that they're liars and murderers and capable of any kind of crime and covering their tracks. Or when you have a society that's so debased and decadent, it doesn't really matter if people are killed, if people are around the Warhol circle, just mysteriously jump out windows and die and cut their wrists and all the other things. There's a film I saw, a documentary about one of Warhol's lovers, boyfriend, cameraman that walked off into the sea and drowned and killed himself. And one of the people were talking about Warhol encouraging somebody to jump out the window when they're up in the factory. It's a torture chamber. All you have to do is do the littlest bit of research about the drug use and about the brutality and about the sadomasochism and the whips and everything else, and you can say that well, that's what they wanted to do. Well, we're talking about teenagers who are mentally ill or schizophrenic and on drugs. So that's older males or females abusing teenage kids or runaways and what have you, and filming them. Just I pray for everybody in that scene that they find the Lord, that they come out of that bedlam that I came out of, and that they find God. I pray for them. God bless you all.